Do you see that? That's a really interesting comment. With former student athletes, a difference then between former student athletes that were able to go professional and ones that were not in terms of engagement.
Yeah. Well, in one aspect, which is another chess, not checkers aspect. Sorry, we're getting a theme here. I won't even show you that I actually got a chess piece down on my bag.
I mean, that's right on brand.
That is on brand, and that's a little bit more of a nod to my dad, who. Our favorite movie is Count of Monte Cristo. No, I'm not a revengeful person, but there's a lot of life lessons in Count of Monte Cristo of playing the long game, being patient, and understanding every type of situation. And that's the part that I love about the Count of Monte Cristo. But anyways, first off, for those who do go pro and do kind of make a name brand, they rarely will tell you when they're coming back to campus. They're flying under the radar. They're flying in, or they're coming in late to the game. But the one person, I'll give you a second to think about it. The one person those athletes always come back to? There's two acceptable answers here.
Coach.
Coach is number 2 in my book, because more often than not, in this nomadic lifestyle of coaches, that coach is probably gone. So they might not even know the coach.
That is true. I mean, I went to the University of Iowa, and
my condolences.
Coach Ferentz has been there forever.
You lucked out.
I'm conditioned to think coaches is always there.
Go punting. So coaches are number 2, and they I would say
what's number 1?
Number 1's the equipment manager.
Oh,
equipment managers rarely leave.
Yeah,
but equipment managers, they got the swag.
That's true.
They want the gear. So I always said, hey, made sure the equipment manager knew who was supposed to be coming, and also, by the way, would say, hey, Casey, let me just shoot a text, so-and-so's here. Because they always come back to the equipment manager because they want the gear. And, your former student athletes that maybe had success, that kind of have a name brand.
Sure.
They're tough. I mean, they feel like they did a lot more for the university than than we did.
Sure.
It was more of, you were blessed to have me. But even, again, with former student athletes that have been successful, they all have their own financial accountants now. And they're all giving to each other's their teammates' nonprofits.
Yeah.
That they're all trying to go to auctions and, buying a $500,000 car for $800,000 at the auction, so they get the car that they wanted anyways, but also a $300,000 fair market value above the top. And next thing you know, they've got a $300,000 write-off, and they also have a car. You can get really creative on some of the financial side. So even those professional athletes, it takes time.
Yeah.
But going back to coaches, the same thing with athletic administrators. You have to have a relationship.
Sure.
And if there's a turnover in terms of the fundraiser, the relationship builder, the coach, the athletic director, they feel like they've lost their touch. Or if their coach moves on to bigger, better, or if their coach gets fired, there's always going to be those type of feelings. But former student athletes, if there's ways that you can get in micro auctions or micro pledges or micro programs to try to make them feel back and connected to the university, and or at the very least, just show them some appreciation.
Yeah.
Recognize them for what they've done. It's the little things that matter.
Now, do you see any sort of former student athlete clubs being formed, or any sort of societies that is designed specifically for that niche?
Absolutely. Yes. And Letterman's winners clubs, varsity letter or varsity club, they all have different names, all very similar. Some operate completely different than others. And again, it depends on the institution. What works in Cedar City might not work in Fargo, North Dakota. It doesn't work. But now throwing on with an NIL aspect in here, that adds another layer, because now they're also being asked for a second aspect of, hey, you remember when you were struggling? Mm-hmm. Now you can help them. And that's going to go one of two ways. Well, they should have helped me when I was there. Or, I want to be involved. This is a great way, because I remember what it was like to be in those shoes, and in those opportunities.
Now, you mentioned NIL. It is all the buzz across collegiate athletics the last couple of years. In your seat, in the departments you've been able to work with and work within, how have you seen NIL really, frankly, change the game?
Well, I'm afraid, Chris, to even give an answer, because by the time this ends up getting produced and then maybe even watched, it's going to change. They're so back and forth.
Yeah.
And then you have an election season coming up, and depending on who the president is, that's also going to determine what it also looks like.
Sure.
How does NIL function within the grand scheme of things? Because now it's becoming a lobbyist point for the NCAA. And I mean, Charlie Baker was a governor, and now he is the head of the NCAA. But to answer your question, NIL's changed everything completely. I am a big believer in NIL. I think it should happen. The part that I struggle with is the pay for play aspect. Come on, are we really giving out $1 million to send out one tweet? when the fair market value is probably like $250,000 for that type of a demographic. That's where it kind of gets out of hand here. But I think NIL, in terms of revenue generation, is a big asset, but it also is diversifying your university's portfolio of donors or corporate partners. Because, I was talking to a gentleman who works at a school outside of Dallas, and they were working with a big donor, and they were planning to make an end-of-year ask. And next thing he knows is he got a text from said donor saying, "Hey, just so you know, I wrote a $400,000 check, and 150 of it is going to the NIL, and the other one's going to coach, for him to pay for food, something like that." And he really wanted to say, "Hey, thank you. We pay for food, like that's
right.
taken care of. So I don't think your money is going to food." But that 150,000, like, that's awesome. Thank you. But on the back end, he knows what that wealth screening knows, that they were planning on doing a $1 million ask. A lot of money is being left on the table, but that donor now, they can't really go back to and say, "Hey, do you think you want to be a part of this?" And they, "Oh, well, I've already made my gift. I'm helping you out, right?" You're losing out and you're diversifying. Throw on, your corporate partnership teams, NIL, fundraising. Now you're adding that third layer of where is that money coming from? Who's it going towards? And you're also lowering your threshold as a fundraising team. So collaboration's key, alignment's key on any institution, any university. It's changed the game. It's here to stay. It's even impacting into apparel deals, because you're hearing about all these jersey patches.
Yeah.
Well, you have Nike, mainly Nike, and then Adidas and Under Armour are now telling schools, you do realize you already have a corporate partner on your jersey, right? And if you think about
That's true.
It is true.
There is a lot of money in those sideline deals.
There is already a corporate partner on the jersey. So why are you diversifying our gift? Because we spend millions of dollars a year on you as an institution.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's real, and it's still not settled. And everybody, there's a little Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Like, it's the game of departments of who's going to get that money, because that brand's already on there.
Yeah.
Do they really want to split that potential revenue? Because, Nike, Adidas, or Under Armour, whomever, New Balance is on, like, no. It adds a completely different layer. So even your internal groups are trying to play a little game of departments, Game of Thrones, to be able to position themselves for some of those revenues.
That's fascinating.
Blown, yeah. Right? It makes a good point. When I first heard it, I'm like, no. I think I'm wrong. Like, I can actually see that from their lens and where they're sitting. That is
one could argue it devalues the original brand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Welcome to the game of NIL, my brother.
Well, you talk about some of the work you've been doing in donorship, athletics. You also teach.
I do.
I mean, you're a man of all sorts of trades. So talk a little bit about what you're doing to give back to students and share the wealth of knowledge you have in more of a journalism background.
Yeah. My undergrad was in mass communication. Was editor-in-chief of a small college newspaper, and then kind of transitioned in more into the broadcasting, first couple of years working at a radio station. So this feels really taking me back a little bit.
You hijacked the buttons here for a little while.
Here we go. That was good. See, I know what that button does. Oh, that's really going. Thank you. Sorry.
It just kind of keeps going.
It was itching. It was just itching. I'm like, I've got to hit a button.
Shiny button, go.
No, from a
I've got an 8-year-old and we have a book. Don't touch the button. And like, that's all that's going through my head.
I'm sorry. And the next thing you know, I'll be in the room playing chess. So no, we've got, at Utah State, with my background in journalism, and also, just the day-to-day experiences through athletics admin. And in those experiences, I want to give students the opportunities to get hands-on experiences. And I shape a lot of my classes around, let's prepare you in that first half of the semester to learn something, learn a new skill set. And in that second half, let's find a way for you to use it. Right now, I'm teaching a sports reporting class.
Okay.
It's very wide range. Some students who are very well prepared, other students who have been doing they're really well prepared because they already work for a newspaper or they already work for the school newspaper. And then I have another half of students who are, they're trying to figure out what like the headline or dateline is. So with all of that, as an example, I have a couple students who, they know what they're doing. I'm going to get them connected with some of these institutions that I know, and I'm going to get them to write for these institutions. Why? Because that's great hands-on experience. They're also getting an education. And oh, by the way, when they graduate, they're going to have a really good resume, because look what I did in this one semester of sports reporting. I actually have published work at some of these institutions. And that's something that's
outstanding.
It's hands-on learning. And I think that's the best way to learn, especially in this day and age with AI. The college student's very different. And one thing that I really am appreciative of at Utah State University, the journalism and communication department, is they're letting me give those students those opportunities. Because there's some hoops to jump through. I mean, and also I've got to talk to some of these institutions that I have relationships with and saying, hey, do you have some stories that I'm going to give another 18 to 22-year-old? And so there's also a leap of faith over there. But we're now building out sports certificate, sport journalism certificate, sports media, where the envision is that these students at USU within this program are going to be able to get hands-on experiences to be able to, when they graduate, have something on their diploma that, oh, by the way, it's not just a diploma, it's a resume.
Right.
They're going to have experiences over these, 2, 3, 4 semesters of, hey, intro to mass communication. Hey, that's great. Look what I did for the University of Hawaii. Oh, hey, look what I did here for Boise State University or University of Wyoming. Oh, by the way, I also, on my sports reporting class, I wrote stories for 2 or 3 different schools. And those are great experiences. Again, athletics admin is student-centered, but that translates back over into what Utah State University and the JCOM department is doing with the sports certificate. We want to be student-centered.
Right. No, I mean, preparing those students for real-life experiences with those hands-on learning moments, you can't beat that.
No, you can't. And those are things that are memorable. And I love reading the end of semester evaluations. I mean, it's a little scary at times, but they will remember a lot of these classes, regardless of if we have the assignment of what do you meme, or a breakdown of Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, and how it relates to ethics. That's another. Or there's some advertising, media literacy aspects in there. Being and coming up with creative assignments that aren't just going straight from the textbook. I don't try to use textbooks at all. I think 1 out of every 4 or 5 classes I do bring in a textbook. The rest of them, no, it's on me as a professor to be able to talk and be able to adapt to the student.
Sure.
And what's happening now. And that's really important for these students in this generation.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we had a guest a couple of podcasts ago. I believe you might know him, Jared Tippett from SUU.
Dr. Jared Tippett. Sorry, I didn't know he was a doctor. I might know him.
And him and Eric were on, and they were talking about just the needs of Gen Z and how that's evolved from just even us millennials not that long ago, and how it even looks like it'll be changing again when Gen Alpha comes about, and how quickly these things evolve, and how higher education has to continue to evolve. And it's one of those things where you look at those real world experiences and prepping students with concrete things they've touched, done, achieved. You can't beat that.
No, you can. And one of my favorite things to tell students at the beginning of the semester is, and they get really excited when I say, oh yeah, my tests are open book, open note.
I mean, you're meeting them where they're at.
Exactly. And open book, open note, open AI. But
here
comes the but. Here's the but. It's timed.
Yeah.
And that's the part where I bring in some of my experiences from, fundraising, marketing, branding, licensing, and now teaching is, everything I do, I'm asked from an institution is in a way open book, open note, open AI, right? I mean, even in your role, it's there, but it's timed. They're giving you a deadline, and whether they know it or not, it's going to probably come through when they have about 90 seconds per question.
Sure.
Because if they did the reading, if they did the PowerPoints, by the way, I just said no textbooks, the reading that I provide them using, recent scholarly journals, not a textbook, it's going to be shown. Right. And, they can use AI. That's fine. But I'd rather let them use it to not abuse it, but use it to enhance their current writing, enhance the way they're building out a marketing or advertising strategy. That's the key.
Right.
And I need to be open to it. I can't fight it because, spoiler alert, I've used AI.
Sure.
Now, not to do my whole work, but it's a great resource to when I build out a project or a portfolio for an institution or department. If I'm putting my name or athletics admin's brand on there, I want to make sure that it at least looks A, professional, B, the typos are gone. I mean, there's probably going to be some mistakes depending on how you look at the British comma or the Oxford comma. But again, from that point on, I want to make sure that we're enhancing and utilizing it. And that same thing goes from what Dr. Jared Tippett and Eric Kirby.
Yeah.
I mean, they get it. Fantastic individuals.
Absolutely. You talk about fantastic individuals from some of the institutions you've worked at, from Heidi to Eric and Jared at SUU to other folks just across the landscape.
And the ocean.
and the ocean. And the ocean. Well played. Well played. We love our friends out in Hawaii.
Absolutely.
When it comes to those relationships, though, and you think about how they impact the brands they represent and how you can go to market with that brand, you've lived in that licensing realm, you've protected the brand, and there's a big difference between the academic side that a lot of these folks will reside on and the athletic side that a lot of other folks that you know very well will reside within, and they have to meet in the middle and all operate underneath an umbrella of the university brand.
Absolutely.
So what's some of the challenges you saw in your time in that role from the academic side versus the athletic side?
So I've said this before, and I might have even said it on the last podcast I did with y'all. I am waiting for a university to include collegiate athletics in their mission statement. It doesn't. I teach another class at Utah Tech.
I have yet to see it.
Exactly. I teach a sports management class at Utah Tech. And I've done this actually in my sports reporting class too, at the beginning of the semester, saying y'all are going to get 50 points extra credit if you can go find me a mission statement from a Division I, D2, D3 institution. There might be a junior college out there, who knows, that includes athletics in their mission statement. You're working on 2 different calendars, a semester, and we have a game next week. We have a game tomorrow. Got to get the kid eligible, now.
Yep.
Versus again, fiscal year. It doesn't work like that. They work on 2 completely different operating systems. Even from a licensing standpoint, as you probably are well aware in club colors, depending on where the LD resides, is it on campus or is it in athletics? Those are 2 completely different ball games.
2 different mindsets entirely, too.
Exactly. I mean, and explaining some of the trends or even like retro throwbacks, which is something that we love to do at Athletics Admin with our jersey program, sometimes is a little bit difficult. And you've got to work it out. You've got to find a halfway point. And if you can't find a halfway point, it's probably not going to happen. But I think also something with Athletics Admin that we do really well is that, I've worked in the athletics landscape. We have another employee who's been helping out, and she worked on the athletics aspect. Then we have 2 PhD professors who are professionals and top of their field that help out. We bridge the gap. So we can look through those different lenses. And I like to joke that at Athletics Admin, we speak various campus languages. We speak bookstore.
That's true.
We speak, Heidi Adams. We speak the licensing and marketing at Utah State. We also speak what Coach says. I wrote a blog for UniWatch I can't remember, but I talked about the brand police. I'm still waiting for the brand police to come find me and arrest me because Coach wanted to have something that had their logo for the defensive backs. It's a vernacular jargon in football, in football, of no-fly zone. And I just remember sitting across from a licensing director, and they were like, it's not on brand. Like, what does that even mean? We don't have aviation at our school. And, this person who's probably never played football in their life or maybe even watched, which is fine. We all have our interests, was so adamant going, no. And I'm just seeing this football coach who's now gotten his head coach involved, who's gotten the athletic director involved. Like, why can't we just write no fly zone underneath the logo? It happens. You're speaking 2 completely different languages and operating, $100 million, $200 million entity with a subsidiary that has their own $30 to $40 million budget that does not fit within the mission statement of the university or college. It doesn't exist. So how do we combat that? Going back to the front, what does success look like? How can we define it? How can we make those quantifiable goals? How can we have that alignment when we're working out and being asked by a project to say, we need to drive revenue. We're targeting $50,000 a year, and we need to do X, Y, and Z. And usually X, Y, and Z has multiple facets that require somebody from campus, if not all of them. So guess what? Y'all have to play nicely in the sandbox. And sometimes we're the sandbox. We're the ones who are going to represent on behalf of the athletics department to be able to be in the room to communicate with the university on the why. And I think what we can pull from other institutions, they do it there? Yeah, hey, here we go. Let me pull it out. This is exactly what we did at Southern Utah University with our retro uniforms. This is how, Oh, it's also driving sales in the bookstore? Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and it's driving alumni to come back? Yeah, because your alumni base recognizes this logo from 20 to 30 years ago, and we're going to use it. So let's license and market it this way. And so there's a lot of dominoes. That alignment comes up where we want to talk about what's our quantifiable goals, how can we come in, and how can we make it be successful?
I mean, I can hear the passion coming out in your voice on this one. And it's one of those things that I think of through the book that you're building. And are those brands that you're representing, and are there projects coming up that you're really excited about from, the 4, 5, 6 universities I can think of off the top of my head that you're working with?
Well, and there's another 4 or 5 that probably in the next 3 months are going to, I mean, the paperwork's halfway done that I'm really excited about. Yeah. And I think the overall scope is, from University of Hawaii's apparel deal that we just ended. And that is a very unique process on understanding how the apparel companies work. But to answer your question on, the projects that really get me going, we're finding tremendous success at Athletics Admin. We're consultants contract, we're a little marketing agency, whatever you want us to be. I've even been the sports information director for golf at USC Upstate for 5 months because we were backfilling. Yeah. They needed help. And it's like, hey, we know you've worked on multi-million-dollar projects for these
picked
schools.
Up a shovel and you got to work.
Roll up the sleeves. We're gonna go to work. But anyway, so we've done a wide range of projects, and we're going to continue to do that. We want to find a way to get to yes. We want to be a team player. We want to be aligned to be student-centered. So the projects that we found a lot of success on that always get me excited is when these schools come and say, hey, we heard you'll buy our basketball jerseys, or we're dabbling with football jerseys. What can you do? And our project is, okay, well, we can either do a city edition, we can do a faux back or a futuristic jersey, but what we're finding a lot of success in is let's go to your licensing, let's go to your program that is having your historic marks, your legacy marks, retro marks. Let's create a jersey. The vault, yes, the limited edition. Let's create a jersey with those marks. Let's create something that fans are going to go, ooh, I want that. 2, I want to come to the game where the promo the promo shoot. I'm drawing a blank on the name. Announcing the starting lineups, all that before the hype. Video is in black and white, and you put little old time music on. You can just have a lot of fun with it. It's a fun fan experience.
You're tapping into nostalgia. Yes, I think that's always a win in marketing.
Emotional heartstrings. So we're building out the jersey, and we're buying the jersey, and we're buying T-shirts, we're buying hats out of our budget, and then we're putting on a game. We're creating an experience by doing a game, footing the bill, because universities and athletic departments kind of have tight budgets. I don't know if you knew that, even though a lot of people don't think they do, but we're buying those jerseys. They get to wear them for 1 game. Sometimes we could squeeze it out to 2, depending on the calendar.
Sure.
And we're then auctioning those jerseys off. And the schools are going, why? Well, we can do it ourselves. You absolutely can. And we're not going to be able to do it at some of these big institutions because they could probably buy the auction platform, which, oh, by the way, we also have. They can do their own marketing. Oh, we have a marketing game plan that has worked and proven to be successful. And we are taking on the risk by buying those jerseys because they don't want to buy jerseys just for 1 game. So those projects that I'm really excited about are when the schools are coming to us and saying, hey, we want to do a game that we can make an experience. We want to drive revenue, but we want to make sure that people walk around and go, hey, when's that game next year?
Yeah.
Hey, when is that game next year? When we did it at Southern Utah, especially year 1, which it got denied 2 years in a row. And this is kind of where this idea, conceptualized. Long story short, I walked into the athletic director's office, pulled out my wallet, gave my credit card, said, we're doing this. If it fails, you can put those $4,000 on my credit card. Here's an MOU that this employee is acting and will take on if we don't make money off this. We made $35,000. And then, oh, by the way, that was just in the auction aspect. It didn't include the bookstore sales. It didn't include the single game ticket sales. But
didn't include concession sales from the seats.
Exactly.
From the bodies in the seats.
You had folks in the community who had not been to a game in years that were showing up in their Letterman's jackets in those ugly colors that we did. Yeah. But long story short, we want to make sure we're creating those experiences, and that's what I get excited about with all these schools when they say, hey, we have an idea. Can you help us with it?
So you're taking that idea and you're bringing it to life, and you're coming up with the plan to execute the vision.
Absolutely. All for the great price of like $100 a week. Don't worry if it's sustainable or not. We have other means to where we can make sure that we're making a living off of it. But again, we're student centered. it doesn't cost that much to create an experience. It really doesn't, both on the consumer side or on the front side of it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really cost that much. But we have a great game plan, and at Athletics Admin, we are working backwards. Let's define success. Let's do quantifiable things, and we'll get there.
Outstanding. We've talked about a lot today, but I see us creeping up on our clock here, so we're going to keep this concise. We're going to get things wrapped up here for you, KC, get you out of here. To finalize things and wrap things up, you've talked a lot about different ways you can come into contract negotiations with apparel and different things that have come up from projects with Hawaii and different opportunities. How does branding and licensing work in these types of negotiations, and when does it really come through as a process that you're trying to navigate?
Yeah, great question, Chris. Brands know, especially your Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, they know what you're doing. They know what you're buying. Like that's part of the information that they ask for on the front end. They know also what your brand could technically be worth. But something that we learned at the University of Hawaii, again, method to the madness, chestnut checkers. Yeah. When we did a lot of these jersey sales leading up to it, or these one-off projects, it was more of a barometer of, all right, what does this look like? We got $85,000 just from 2 jerseys, essentially. It was really 1.5 jerseys if you think about it, but $85,000. And oh, by the way, it was on the cover of a couple of websites. I think it got over 250,000, interactions with the webpage. We leaked it, a strategic leak, to some higher end individuals that are, maybe more influencers to help promote it.
Sure.
And then we have random people from, Myrtle Beach to, Tallahassee, that's the same state, Rockland County, New York, to Boise, Idaho, talking about these jerseys that we're doing that's very different. And it shows that there's a little value. There's interest. And so as we were building up to this and starting to have some of these conversations with these brands, we knew what we were worth. We also could see what the baseline of all the other contracts were in the country. And we realized, hey, we need to get to this spot.
Right.
And
you defined your own success.
Exactly. We need to get to this spot because this is what we think we can get. And, as negotiations kind of came down, we actually got more above and beyond, because as we talked about some of our future goals, future plans, it got some of these other brands super excited. And when we're talking about, all these big old contracts that cost a lot of money, it doesn't cost that much. It's communication, it's building a relationship and talking about a game plan to help build a brand. And if Adidas, Nike, or Under Armour are along with us, hey, you come along for the ride, we're going to make sure we're going to have a lot of success. And, it's fun. I love doing these apparel contracts, but I think a lot of it is that open communication, taking the plate off of the athletic director or somebody else's hands and saying, what does success look like? Let's work and make a plan to get there. And we did that at the University of Hawaii.
I love it. You're making things easy for folks to go do the rest of what their actual job is. Imagine that.
I thought, do they have jobs? I thought they just watch sports. Is that how that works?
Casey, this has been outstanding.
Thanks,
I've
Chris.
loved our conversation today. Would love to have you back in the studio anytime.
I'm invited back. Let's go.
You're always invited back.
All right. Sounds like a plan. We'll be number 3 next time, right?
That's right.
Can I get a shirt?
Maybe we'll make a little 3-peat.
Done. Perfect. Thanks, Chris.
Love it.